in this part of the proceedings, we invite our speakers, first of all, to make some comments or indeed to direct questions at each other about their presentations. Maybe there are particular themes that have come out today that have kind of struck you or whatever that you'd like to talk about.
Maybe we should just address our questions to each other and you can all go home.
I was interested, for instance, that collaborations and partnerships came up quite a bit. I thought in nearly all the presentations today, whether anyone had any comments or questions to each other about that, for instance. Or interventions, that was another word. There seems to be a fair bit of interventions going on. Or hybridity, that was another thing that occurred to me, sort of contemporary reinterpretations of heritage and that kind of thing, or sort of interesting hybrid, giving unexpected outcomes and so on.
I just wanted to make a comment about something that's happened more recently, which is different disciplines working together, and particularly the fact that everybody has a different role to play, and sometimes the difficulties or the challenges with regard to different fields and different ideas and sharing perspectives and coming to mutual agreements on those ideas. And just as an example, working with heritage and interpretation and the arts in particular, and tourism and culture, and a few of the other things that get thrown in the mix, just the importance of working through processes together and really setting aside time for that and building that into projects and programs. Because and my experience is I've found more recently that everybody plays a role, but there often isn't time for the sharing of perspectives or different ideas in any great sort of context that you start to push those boundaries a little bit more. And we've recently experimented with those sorts of things, allowing more time and additional processes for historians working with artists, and particularly those who may not have worked within different fields before, and it's been a really positive thing.
So facilitation is a tremendous skill in itself, what you're saying.
And often that process would lead to the generation of something else.
Okay. Robin, did you have any comment on that? Because you're sort of in that area a little bit, weren't you? You must have been working with different teams in the museums and so on, and having to facilitate as well.
I get mine's a kind of very different thing where Michael gave an example of the artists working with collections to highlight like colonial injustices or the white paternal system or whatever. Whereas mine are more, I guess in a sense, a celebration of the archive. So they're not, in a sense, they're a way of trying to put it out again to people to realise what's really been forgotten and the value of the repository rather than a critique on a period or a historical event. So I guess it's a different, my problems are more practical ones where when these projects happen, it's extra workload for people. Generally, they don't want to know about it. Why would they want to do it? And it's really one of kind of getting everybody on side to convince people that it will be a good thing for the institution at the end of the day. And the books have definitely, for the herbarium and for the McLean Museum, it's really helped them fundraise and it's really helped them with their profile. So I see the books and the exhibitions as quite different. In the exhibitions I can do what I like, but in the book, like I said, I'm aware that it does have the imprimatur of the institution, and there is a history there that I sort of feel I have to honour.
I was just wondering whether the idea of partnership, which I think if we put it to a vote, everyone would agree was a pretty cool thing. And I'm sure there wouldn't be anyone other than maybe people like me who would disagree. But I was wondering whether that whole idea of partnership is in fact out of date. Is it something that's now disappearing slowly? We've been talking about the net and connectedness and a whole approach to things, all of which interestingly dispense with one-to-one communication, it seems to me. We were having a conversation about Damien Hirst, as you do, at lunchtime. And what he's doing is he's auctioning his material, which is kind of nice, that's good. But the thing is, he's auctioning it himself. It hasn't been through a dealer, it hasn't been on the market. He's simply, for the last 2 years, been creating work to sell at auction. And interestingly, the cheap works are going for $1 billion, and the cool one with the unicorn in the Formula box is going for $15 million. All very interesting, he's making a lot of money, that's nice. But what comes out of that, the connectedness is certainly disappearing, where you simply dispense with the dealer, the critic, the intermediaries, the people who actually work up something. It does disappear, I think. That do you in fact need to visit the gallery, or do you just look online and click, and your 15 billion goes from your bank account to Damien Hirst's bank account? I'm suggesting that there, despite the idea of communication being fabulous and interesting, I'm wondering whether it in fact is disappearing or changing in a way that we're not anticipating, or alternatively can't predict. Do you talk to your friends, or do you just go to your Facebook page? Those kind of things I think are very interesting, and in a sense they have a relevance to this meeting, only because it seems to me that art is about communication, and a lot of the communication comes from seeing the globs on the Dale Frank painting there, that when you see it online, you don't see that, you're not aware of the size, things are homogenised, you don't have those differences that come out of two people meeting. Does that make sense? Are people agreeing or violently disagreeing?
Yeah, you could open it up to the floor. Any comments or further questions?
I've got a comment on that. I don't think the exhibition space is going to disappear at all. I mean, to quote Grandmaster Flash, it's going to be exhibitions in the Hall of Fame in the future. And I think people want the different spaces because everybody's online, and you go somewhere to experience in a different way. So, like, there's a new natural history museum in Paris, which is over 3 floors and has the giant, skeletons and the things in the big cases and all of that. But it's in a giant kind of palatial building. And when you walk in there, the architecture, the objects themselves, it's like the lighting, that whole experience. If you looked at it on the screen, it would be such a diminished experience. You go midweek in the depth of winter, it's packed. You go to Corbeil in the depth of winter, you have to queue for an hour and a half to get in, and people wait because you go into that, the Petit Palais, and you see the Corbeils. And I know there's the one we talked about through that virtual experience, but and I'm delighting and everything like that, again, adds to it. But the paintings do it. They do it by themselves. They don't need the sound effects. They don't need all those other things. And there aren't a shortage of people to go to those things. So I think just go for it rather than everyone trying to, kind of be online. I mean, I don't think that's the answer for consumers and galleries.
I wasn't suggesting that it was a desirable thing, and because they're interested in art, therefore we value the object, clearly. Simply, I'm saying that, for me, I visited Lucy Freud's studio and I found it incredibly arousing, just the smell of linseed oil. It's probably weird of me, but nonetheless, I like it. But at the same time, what I'm also doing is that I'm sending an email to the person at the next desk at work, and we all do, maybe you don't, but I do and a lot of other people do. Why is that? What's the attraction of hardware? That you look at the screen where the safety instructions on the plane are given, but not the steward or stewardess. Why is that? Why are we becoming more attuned to the hardware?
But maybe that's just hierarchies of information and you want different things. Like you don't really want to look at the stewardess, but you go, I should probably listen to the safety thing in case there is a crash. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's a different.
Either, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's nervousness about online experiences and perhaps reflected in that observation or that suggestion of people aren't really connecting in real life because they've got Facebook and email and so on, and people aren't going to museums because there's virtual museums. I think a lot of that kind of apprehension about that or observation is based on this idea that there's only a finite amount of culture. There's only a finite cultural experience that someone can have, and only a finite amount of communication. So, if they're on Facebook, then they're not actually going to. That's every minute they're on Facebook is a minute less they're going to be face to face with someone. I don't actually think that's the case. I think that yes, there's only 24 hours in a day, but I think an online experience, even if it is based on a work that you could see a lot better in real life, there are things that the online experience can do, using hardware and software and so on, that doesn't really have an equivalent in the real world. It's not necessarily trying to compete. It's not on the same stage. It's a different stage, and a lot of people, myself included, enjoy both the virtual online experiences and the physical actual experiences.
I just want to make a comment on that. And it happens to me every day. There's only a certain amount of time I can stare at a screen for. And I think these things run in cycles. You might find a great website or a great application and you play with it for a while, but then you might grow tired of it, so you move on to something else. And I think it works the same with things like Facebook. When you sign on initially, yeah, great, you're into it, but then a few months pass and you don't spend as long on it anymore. You might go outside and play with the kids, or these. I think it's about what you want at that time when you discover it, and if it meets and satisfies your needs, then you'll do it. But at the same time, I hear more concepts around the fact that we're exposed to about, on average, 1,600 ads per day. This is through either radio, television, billboards, anything that we might see, brand names included. 1,600 on average. And that makes me think about how we scan, what we take in, what we block out. Whether we're sitting on the bus on the way to work, do we actually read the billboard ad? Or are we becoming more selective with what we want to take in, what we seek out?
I think we've always been selective. I don't think that's a new phenomenon. If you paid attention to absolutely every bit of stimulation that came to you, you'd probably go crazy, wouldn't you? So I don't think that's something that's necessarily a part of of recent times. I think that's been around for a long time. Admittedly, advertising is increasing, and but in a way, the insistence that mode that advertising uses to try to convince you actually works the other way. But in the web, there's this phenomenon called banner blindness. So that if you have an important notice that you want to put on a website page, and so you put it on a coloured background or something, you think that no one's going to miss that. You'll actually discover that most people will miss it because the position, the colour, the shape, and so on looks like something that you're supposed to click to go and buy something. So people will just ignore it. They just turn it off, which is fine in a way. People learn to navigate their way around the environment of sensations and so on. We as content providers have to actually learn to adapt to that.
I just wanted to ask a question, sorry, it's different, but the lady who asked a question about floods in 1974, are you going to do an exhibition?
I'm in the collection area, so we don't have to make, but we're redeveloping the website, and got collection strengths, and certainly putting floods as one of those, so people who want to go in and find out about the floods. But I think that, you know, when they do those tag clouds or searches on what people are using your resources and collections for, and it's perhaps in libraries where so much more of your material is available online and catalogued, and that you can do that. And I think it's how you use that as a tool and find out what people are, you know, lucky for us, Queensland is a high-end history, and you know, I think art is about number 7. So, you know, I think it is incredible. And every day you can do a search on what people have been searching that day, and we can narrow it down to things like Picture Queensland, how people use that. So, and we're just looking, like many others are putting, or museum libraries I think doing it, are putting images up on Flickr as well, so that you take your images to where you want people, to where people will be able to find them. Anyone else from the library want to? There's a few of us.
Stephanie, I think we have done an exhibition on floods, haven't we? A travelling exhibition. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the floor for our panel?
Yes, I'd like to ask Jonathan. Sorry. It seemed to me that the virtual exhibition concept has, you know, much further to go. I just wondered what you thought you could do with it when you put it up. Was it just simply to see what people would do? I mean, just when you were talking about universities kind of connecting with it and using it as a teaching tool, did you have that in mind, or what did you think people would do?
Probably, because I actually come from an education background. So although I'm the website manager, I'm actually in public programs of education. So I see it very much from that point of view. But I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be used in formal education, so I was pleasantly surprised when it was. And in fact, the very first formal education context for it was Joanna Mendelsohn from the College of Fine Arts using it for Australian Art History course. But I think even if you're doing it individually, that's a way of it's like sometimes you don't know what you know until you start talking to someone else about it, because then you're having to actually organise your ideas, and at the end of a conversation with someone you often find, oh yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that before, but somehow in verbalising I had. So it's the same sort of way you bring together works from the collection, you find connections that maybe you didn't notice before, and that's an educational experience.
So you saw it really you just thought, let's see what will happen.
Basically, yes.
And so are you excited, or?
Yes, yeah, very excited. Yeah. Actually, a question that sometimes comes up, and in a way I'm a bit surprised that people haven't, no one's asked it yet, is aren't you afraid that you're going to get inundated by emails? Every time someone clicks submit, it sends me an email and I have to respond to it. And I had noticed that since coming up here from Sydney yesterday, 3 people decided to submit their exhibition, so I'm hoping to find an internet connection so I can, otherwise they'll be sort of wondering what's going on. But in a way, I look forward to being a bit overworked in that regard, because it's an actual connection with real people out there, whereas so much of the time when you're working on the web, and to a certain extent in museums, you create these things and then you hope that people are getting something out of it, but unless you actually walk around in the museum and listen to people saying, oh, isn't this fabulous, you know, you don't actually know how it's coming across. Whereas, you know, every time someone clicks the submit button and I look at what they've done, I think, yeah, it's such a great thing to see what someone's doing with a tool that you've made.
Just a further question related to virtual exhibition is around copyright, and you gave an example of, you know, empty places. Does that affect much of the collection? And is there a different kind of copyright arrangement that you need to come to with?
No. My virtual gallery uses exactly the same copyright licenses that we've got for the main website because it is in the same domain. But if someone were to do an exhibition and they go, oh, I want Whiteley, I'm sure that lots of people have done this.
Yes.
So they type in Whiteley and it comes up with 3 little thumbnails, one of which is that William Pigeon portrait of Miss Whiteley something or other. And so people get disappointed, but when you do a collection search, unless you click only show me records that have images, if you don't click that, then you'll get all those things saying image not available, image not available. So we're showing you that we have these works, but we just can't illustrate them. So I guess a lot of people, if they're doing it just through my virtual gallery, wouldn't actually realise that they're missing out on a whole lot of potential artworks, unless there's a particular artwork that they're looking for, I suppose. And they go, oh, why isn't it there?
So you can do a whole exhibition with no images.
Yes, which is kind of like what the Biennale did,
Just one quick one in the context of this presentation. Have artists done virtual exhibitions?
No artists that I know of that in our collection, I don't think. But there have been a few poets from the Poets Union who've created exhibitions and written poetry for it, which is kind of nice. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are artists, undiscovered artists, that have created exhibitions. I don't know. Maybe they're just undiscovered by me, which doesn't mean much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are close to time. One more question.
Just your virtual gallery again. Is that being used by curatorial staff to actually create exhibitions?
Well, as I said, the head of the curatorial department, Tony Bond, has actually used it. To date, no exhibition has actually come out of a curator doing that, but a number of them have had a go at it. That's a little bit disappointing to me. I think some of them think it's a great idea. And as I said, some of them are actually doing it in the reverse order. They're using it to preserve something that they spent time creating.
So the works can be scaled. Are they to scale?
Well, that's an issue. When people create these exhibitions, sometimes they'll put an Indian miniature and they'll blow it up because you can expand it, but they'll put it next to a Howard Arkley or something, and they'll sort of shrink that down to make it fit. And so that's one of the most common things that I have to write back to people saying, if you double click on it, you can actually read what the dimensions really are, and that'll give you an idea of doing it. I mean, I don't insist on it being exactly to scale, otherwise you'll get something that's like 5 pixels by 5 pixels or something. But as long as the relative scales are kind of acknowledged, I think that's okay. Or else you can just have one work on one wall, and then you don't have to put 2 works side by side.
Any more burning questions before we close? Yes, over there.
I thought if this is the last question, we might make it a bit lighter. So my question for Jonathan is, with your Art Gallery of New South Wales Facebook, do you let everybody be your friend?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever knocked back anyone. So I'm happy to have lots of friends. That's right. But so far, I haven't gone over 100 yet.
Okay, I think that just about wraps it up. Look, on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank our speakers for a very engaging afternoon, and thank you very much for travelling up to Brisbane to do your presentations. Thank you.